everyone, welcome to our program entitled Heal Your Lifestyle. I am your host, Jai, for this special health program which we are bringing to you through Southeast Asia Hope Channel. Heal Your Lifestyle is a 5-episode program that educates, inspires, and motivates you to change your lifestyle. Lifestyle diseases such as heart disease, cancer, stroke, diabetes, and respiratory diseases accounts for 62% cause of death in Southeast Asia. And did you know that number one cause of death in most Asian countries such as Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, Indonesia, Singapore, and the Philippines is heart disease, with 4.2 million deaths in a year. But the good news is, it can be prevented. The reason it is called lifestyle diseases is because all these diseases are related to our lifestyle. Our choices on food, whether or not we exercise, have enough sleep, and etc. And today, we have experts who will discuss all about diabetes, heart disease, respiratory diseases, cancer, and how to manage it through healthy diet and exercise. So do follow us for these 5 episodes of learning through the Southeast Asia Hope Channel. And if you have any questions, do drop us a message. Also, you may put a like on our A Treasure Facebook page. And lastly, we are present in our A Treasure website. At the end of this program, we will organize a question and answer series via Zoom, and we would like to invite you to join us. Our first speaker today is a medical doctor by profession and a preventive health specialist. She completed her Bachelor of Medicine and Bachelor of Surgery from Christian Medical College in Vellore, India. Her Master in Public Health and Doctor of Public Health major in Preventive Care from Loma Linda University, United States of America. She also completed her certificate in Molecular Nutrition and Genomics at the European Genomics Organization. She is a member of American College of Preventive Medicine, American College of Lifestyle Medicine, Malaysian Society of Allergy and Immunology, and Malaysian National Registry of Specialists as Public Health Specialist. She has vast experience as a medical practitioner, medical director, health educator, and as a preventive health specialist. To talk about Heal Your Lifestyle Against Cancer, I present to you Dr. Chu Yen.
We are looking at cancer today, and we are looking at it because it is the number 2 cause of death in Malaysia, and it is very quickly going to become the number 1 cause of death. And more we hear of our family or friends or colleagues or anyone we know of having or had cancer. Now, we actually have a very negative association with the word cancer. When we hear the word cancer, some of us are so scared because we know that it shortens life. We know that we have seen people suffer. Compared to diabetes or high cholesterol, it doesn't come with that kind of negative emotion. And worse still, this negative emotion or fear paralyzes people from seeking treatment or going for a checkup to find out if they have the cancer. The reason being that we just don't want to know. And that don't want to know delay the diagnosis, delay the treatment plan, and therefore delay the success rate, or rather reduce the success rate. So we kind of like, when we are dealing with a topic like cancer, we have to understand, number one, that there are 160 different types of cancer. So when we say the word cancer, it means any of the 160 types. And as a result, what we hear about the horror stories from someone about how their experience may not be the same cancer. And so we must understand that the word cancer comes with negative emotion. And as we deal with talking about lifestyle and lifestyle factors that can be changed to reduce the risk of cancer, we must also give the encouragement, because you already have a negative picture. But the good news is cancer is actually a lifestyle disease with multiple factors, like the way we live, the way we eat, the number of hours that we sleep, whether we are overweight or obese, whether we are able to exercise or not exercise, or sleep well or don't sleep well. All these interact to give the risk for cancer. And today we really want to look at how we can change that risk, what lifestyle changes we can make, and not be just like if we have a family history of cancer, we just be fated to have cancer and not do anything. So we need to understand how that happens. All right, so what is cancer actually? Cancer is a disease in which some of the body cells grow out of control, start dividing a lot, and then become a lump. And depending on where it starts, it becomes a cancer. So if it starts from the eye, it's an eye cancer. It starts from the liver, it's a liver cancer. It starts from the lung, it's a lung cancer. And so all these 160 different cancers that grow out of control is described as cancer, as if it is just one disease. So cancer comes from within. It's our own cells growing out of control, going rogue, so to speak, and dividing far more than the other cells and affecting the other cells. All right? So in order to look at lifestyle changes, we look at what lifestyle is linked with cancer. So the number one preventable cause of cancer is cigarette smoke. Oh, you know that already, right? I mean, cigarette smoke, lung cancer. And that's what a lot of people think. They don't realize that actually, besides lung cancer, cigarette smoke causes about 17 other cancers. Then you say, but I don't smoke, so it's not an issue for me. You don't smoke, yes, it's not an issue for you, but do you inhale cigarette smoke? Are you living in the house with someone who smokes in the house, and therefore you inhale cigarette smoke as a secondary smoker? Are you working in a place where there are many people smoking, and during your hours of work, you are actually exposed to cigarette smoke? And are you going to restaurants where people smoke, even though the law says you are not supposed to smoke indoors? There are still restaurants who allow people to smoke indoors, like as if they have a partition just outside at the door, but still the smoke comes in. So whether you are a primary smoker or a secondary smoker, the cigarette smoke itself, when you inhale it in through your nose, through your mouth, your throat, and then to your lungs, it carries with it 4,000 chemicals. 4,000 chemicals. And 70 carcinogens, which is 70 cancer-causing substances. And it goes into your body, and because it's a toxin, the body starts doing things to it to protect itself. Let's look at some of the things that are toxic that is going into the body. One of them is arsenic. Arsenic is a poison. People use it to murder people or kill rats. All right? Rat. You kill rats with arsenic. And you also have ammonia, which is from floor cleaner. You also have polonium, which is a radioactive substance that is produced at the nuclear plant. You also have cadmium, which is from batteries, car batteries, and nobody in their right mind would put all this together and swallow it or put it into their body. But the cigarette smoke contains all these blasts coming up to 4,000 chemicals and 70 carcinogens. And therefore, when the cigarette smoke goes in to the nose, the throat, and the whole place that it passes through, all those places can become cancers. All right? So therefore, if you are exposed to somebody who is smoking in front of you or asks you, is it all right if I smoke? Please say no, because you already choose not to smoke. You have the right to say, no, I don't want to inhale the smoke, whether it is from a cigarette, a cigar, a kretek, or even from now we call e-cigarette or vape. Those smokes all contain all these chemicals and all these carcinogens. All right, stand up for your health. Tell that person, no thank you, I'd rather you not smoke in front of me because I've chosen not to smoke. All right? So you say, oh, maybe it's once in a while, let's not make an issue. I think it is not just once in a while, let's not make an issue, because the statistics show that even smoking one cigarette a day increases your risk by 64% from all causes of death. One cigarette a day increases your risk by 64%. So one exposure of tobacco smoke here, another exposure here, it adds up in your lifetime. Don't think that it's nothing. All right? So the carcinogens that are present in the cigarette smoke, there are 70 of them, and it's just too many for me to list in the slide. So in the slide, we have just put a few, which is just benzene, which we know is used in furniture. And then you have polycyclic hydrocarbons. Polycyclic hydrocarbons are carcinogens that are formed when you, for example, you barbecue meat or you grill meat, you get polycyclic carbons. And that same thing is actually found in the cigarette smoke. So 70 carcinogens, you're really throwing a dice. If it's just one cancer, you throw a dice, maybe in your lifetime you don't get that cancer. But when you have one plus 17 others, you're throwing your dice and taking a chance. And most of the time, you're not winning, all right? Because you're just taking too high a chance. So you have all the organs that the smoke goes through, causing the cancer. Then you have in the urinary tract, you have in the kidney, you have in the bladder, you have it. Then you say, how in the world? The smoke is not going through all those places. How can it cause cancer? Because there are 70 carcinogens, right? So it goes into your bloodstream, and from the bloodstream, it goes to the other organs, all right? So it's not just where it passes through, all right? Now, the other factor that we know causes cancer is alcohol. And we know that for many years, we have said that alcohol is a co-carcinogen. In other words, it only helps a carcinogen to cause cancer. By itself, it does not. And for many years, people have thought that, well, if you drink alcohol and you don't smoke, it's okay. But if you drink alcohol and smoke, then only the cancer becomes more likely to happen. But we know now that's not true. Alcohol itself is a carcinogen. In other words, it can cause cancer without the help of other carcinogens. Now, how does it happen? All right? There are three ways in which alcohol causes cancer in our body. Number one, when you take the alcohol in through your mouth and your throat, it can damage the cells because it is very strong. The alcohol, it damages the cell and it prevents the cell from repairing because it is so strong that it's preventing the cells from repairing. So therefore, and then when it prevents it from repairing, when it finally repairs, it can repair out of the norm, which makes it grow into a tumor. Okay, so that's one way. The second way is that it can actually send signals for the cells when they repair to grow more and faster. And that's the second way. The third way is when you take in the alcohol through your mouth and your throat, it actually causes carcinogens from other things. Let's say you take the alcohol, then you take the steak, and the steak has polycyclic hydrocarbons. But because there was alcohol in your mouth already, the alcohol causes the polycyclic hydrocarbons from the other food to be absorbed better. So really, it's like opening the door to other cancer-causing substances. So it is these pathways that causes cancers in people who drink alcohol long term. And you're looking at 7 cancers that are related to alcohol, and you are looking at liver cancer, mouth cancer, throat cancer, gullet and stomach, because these are all the places that the alcohol will go through. Why liver? Because liver is the detoxifying organ. Because alcohol is a toxin, it will go to the liver, and the liver tries to get rid of it by changing the process and things like that. And if you drink enough every day, you will actually cause cancer to grow in the liver. So it is not a good thing. But it also causes cancer in the other places like the pancreas and the voice box and the bowel and the breast, which again, it is not places that the alcohol normally goes, but the carcinogen from the alcohol travels through our bloodstream and goes to the vulnerable organ and cells and causes the cancer there. So if you have a family history of cancer and you don't want to take alcohol, take the risk and take alcohol because you already have the higher risk from the genetics, because this alcohol can cause cancer. So here's the pathway how the alcohol causes cancer. Besides the other 3 ways, general ways, this is a specific way. The ethanol in alcohol, because it's toxic to our body, is converted to aldehyde. And aldehyde actually causes mutation at the gene level. And it causes DNA changes that makes it to reproduce faster and becomes cancer cells. Worse still, there are some Asians, that's us, who have a genetic problem with aldehyde processing. And as a result, there is more aldehyde that is accumulated. And when all this aldehyde, which is carcinogenic, accumulate in our body, there is a higher chance of making cancer cells. All right? Now then you said, okay, we have covered cigarettes and alcohol, and I don't take any of those. Okay, I will avoid to be a secondary smoker. What else? Well, another issue is overweight and obesity. Then you said, what? Overweight and obesity? Are you serious? How does overweight and obesity contribute to making cancer cells? Well, because overweight and obese people have more fat cells. When they have fat cells causes inflammation. And inflammation initiates cancer cells. In other words, they go to normal cells, this inflammation that surround the normal cell, kind of tap it on the shoulder and said, hey, become cancer cell. So it initiates cancer-making process, those fat cells. And you said, but they are just fat, right? No, we used to think fat cells just store fat. But we now know that it actually manufactures hormones and it manufactures other things, like growth hormones, and then it actually sends signals to other cells. And this communication actually makes the changes that is necessary for the cells to change to cancer cell. So overweight and obesity becomes an issue or a factor in cancer causing. All right? And then you said, well, but then I'm not that overweight, right? After all, almost everybody looks the same in Malaysia, right? Yeah, in Malaysia, 1 in 2 people are overweight and obese. 1 in 2? That's quite a big figure. Yeah, it's quite a big figure. There are 13 cancers associated with overweight and obesity, the most common being breast, colon, rectum, liver, uterus, and ovary. And we want to look at the top 10 cancers in Malaysia. If you look at the top 10 cancers in Malaysia, 3 out of the top 10 is associated with overweight and obesity, and they are breast, colon, and liver. And you say, so how come overweight and obesity can cause this? When I already explained the pathway just now, the point here is this: because overweight and obesity is really a big issue in Malaysia, in the sense that people ignore it because 1 in 2 people are overweight and obese. In other words, if you look at another person, they are also overweight like you. So you say, it's not an issue. It's only when you go overseas to a country like Vietnam, for example, and you find that, hey, everybody is much thinner than you, then you realize you are overweight or obese. And the incidence of 1 in 2 is, when we look at the breakdown, you will find that more than 50% are females, more than 60% are of Indian ethnic group, and more alarming is older people, in the 60% in those who are 55 to 60, and 70% in those who are 60 to 70. So you have these factors that we are finding more in older people, overweight and obesity. And that's not good, because as you age, there is already the factor of aging that contributes to cancer. Then when you're overweight and obese, because after you retire, you may be eating the same amount of food, but you are less active, you no longer go out as much, and you may be having health problems that cause you to not go out, so your weight gains. And so therefore, you have a double risk, first from age, then from overweight and obesity. And they said, oh, well, just a few kilos here and there shouldn't be an issue, right? Well, it's an issue, because every 5 kilo increase in weight is documented that the risk of cancer increases depending on the type of cancer. Remember, 160 different diseases, right? So you're looking at colon cancer rate going up by 9% for every 5 kilo gain of weight, and gallbladder cancer going up by 60% for 56% to be more specific. And then for breast cancer, it actually goes up by 11% for every 5 kilo. So let's say you are not overweight and obese when you were a child, and at 20 years old, you actually are 50 kilos. Then by the time you reach 30 years old, you gain 5 kilos maybe, and that's, you have 55 kilos, right? So your risk actually goes up by the percentage I listed just now. But if you gain 10 kilos, it's times 2. So your risk of overweight and obesity increases as you gain more. Remember, the more fat cells, the more inflammation, the more inflammation, the more initiation of cancer cells. So actually, it's documented that the strength of the causation factor of overweight and obesity is equal to the strength of smoking cigarettes. You said, what? Yeah, what I'm saying is, if you're a non-smoker and you're overweight and obese, your risk for cancer is the same as the smoker. That's how it is alarming, and it is scary in that sense. But it's reversible. You can lose weight. You can lose the number of fat cells or decrease the number of fat. You can decrease the fat content of each cell and decrease the number of cells when you lose weight. But don't lose weight and gain weight, lose weight and gain weight. That's yo-yo. Because whenever you lose weight, you are losing fat, you are losing muscle, you are losing water. But when you gain weight, you are gaining just fat cells. So it is not good news to yo-yo, because when you gain, if you keep gaining number of cells or filling up the shrunken cells with more fat, you are manufacturing more hormones that send signals to initiate cancer cells. Okay? So, obviously, 4 in 10 cancers are actually preventable. 4 in 10. And if you look at this graph, it actually has different circle sizes, because the bigger circles means there are more cancers associated with that lifestyle. So when you go down the bigger circles, there is this medium-sized circle that says, stay safe in the sun. And you said, what? Well, how is preventing cancer by staying safe in the sun? Now, we are in a sunny country, I mean, what do you mean stay safe in the sun? Well, in the 90s, the link of skin cancer and sunlight exposure was well established. And so they had this campaign where they said, if you walk in the sun, you should put sun lotion, you shouldn't sunblock, you shouldn't overexpose your skin to the sun, because then you can get skin cancer. Oh, that is in the West, because in the West, the practice of people going out to the beach for half a day during summer is what they do, because they don't get the sun all the time. So when they see the sun, they are very happy, they wear minimal clothing, they go to the beach, and they sun themselves. And they found that these people were having more skin cancer. So they had this campaign, avoid the sun or reduce your exposure to the sun. It became so successful because industries like makeups and all these were starting to put sunblocks in their face cream, in their body lotion, and everything, to say, oh, protect yourself from the sun. Of course, they charge more for putting all these things. And the campaign came from the West to Asia, where totally it's a different story, because, yes, we have a lot of sun, but we also have darker skin. We are not white. And because we are darker skin, it has melanin that protects us from the UV that causes the skin cancer. And then we don't like the sun. We don't like to become darker. Especially in Malaysia, we avoid the sun. You see people carrying umbrella on a sunny day. You see people walking in the walkways called kaki lima because they don't want the sun. Or they just don't walk in the sun. They just drive to the place that they want to go and park very near, so they don't have to walk so much. But then you say, no, but when you're in the car, the sunlight comes in. Yeah, the sunlight comes in, but you have tint and you have glass that blocks the UV light. And therefore, the risk from skin cancer is very minimal from our little exposure to sun. And what happens is, with the success of this, don't be overexposed to the sun, or over success leads to a vitamin D deficiency. We are now having an epidemic of vitamin D deficiency, which actually contributed to the increase in COVID cases during the pandemic. We can see now that the increase was, the incidence of COVID was higher in those who are vitamin D deficient. We are so trying to protect ourselves from the sun, we make our immune system poorer. And vitamin D, what it does is that it actually, if there are cancer cells growing, it suppresses the growth. If there are cancer cells dividing, it actually it slows down the division. And then if there are tumor cells already and they need new blood vessels, the vitamin D, if it is in the correct amount in our bloodstream, will actually suppress also the formation of new blood vessels, and therefore prevents the cancer from growing out of control. So when vitamin D is low, these things are prevented or not happening. And vitamin D actually has 600 different processes in our body. And that 600 different processes is vital to protect our body from not only cancer, but from other things. And when we don't have enough, because we don't go out to the sun enough, the body rations. When the body rations, it means, oh, you want it for the immune system, you want 100, I give you 80 lah, not enough what? I got 599 processes to support, so you can have less. And 600 processes all ration in our body causes us to have more risk for cancer. So the immune system being weakened, it cannot protect so well. Why? Because our immune system actually have a lot of cells, different type of cells, one of which that protects cancer for our cells from or killing the cancer cells are actually NK or natural killer cells. And when NK or natural killer cells go to kill a cancer cell, see what happens is that the cells divide too fast in the cancer cell, right? So in the cancer picture, and here you have normal cells and you have cells growing very fast, and so they start taking the oxygen, they start taking the nutrients away from the normal cells, and they press onto the normal cell. So the normal cell calls for help to the immune system, and it calls for help, and the immune system sends the NK cell. But the natural killer cell, when it kills the cancer cell, you can see in this picture, it's surrounded by NK cells and it's trying to kill this cancer cell. When it kills the cancer cell, they all die, they sacrifice, they die, and therefore they need to be replenished. And therefore, we always have to have more NK cells. So how do we get more NK cells? Through a very good lifestyle factor, which is exercise. If you look at the second half of the slide, it actually shows that when you exercise, your NK cells go up. So as you deplete your NK cell, you replenish it by exercising. And how much exercise you're talking about? We're talking about moderate exercise. Because moderate exercise itself, they increase the number of NK cell and increase the activity of the NK cell. And you're looking at large muscle movement, which is like brisk walking, jogging, swimming, and you're looking at half an hour a day. So moderate exercise, with frequency of at least every day, and with a duration of about half an hour, it actually helps our immune system protect us from cancer. But there are 7 things that you might be doing that is suppressing or weakening your immune system. Of course, alcohol and cigarette, we know they are toxins, so they also will harm the immune system. And overweight, we already knew that. And overweight comes from eating an unhealthy diet and lack of sleep. Yes, people who sleep less tend to be overweight. All right? And then you say, you mean that if we don't eat healthy, it can cause our immune system to be weaker? Yes. And then if we don't have enough sleep, it causes the immune system to be weaker? Yes. Look at the next one that shows the number of hours that you sleep, and when you are exposed to the virus, what happens? The virus that causes this one is, of course, the flu virus. They cannot expose you to cancer cells. Is exposed to carcinogen. Is not ethical. So they just use volunteers who are willing to get a flu, and then they categorize them in the number of hours of sleep. Those who sleep more than 7 hours when they are exposed to the flu virus, their chance of getting the flu is only about 17%. But if they sleep less than 5 hours, it's just a 2 hours difference, all right? Their chance of getting the flu is 45% for the same exposure. So what we are saying is that when you sleep less, your immune system is weakened. When the germ come in, you cannot fight it as well, so your chance of getting the flu is higher. So then the next question arises, does it mean that if I sleep less and my immune system is weaker, I get more cancers? Well, there is a documentation. When they look at night shift workers And night shift workers tend to sleep less because they already work through the night. When they go home, they can't just plonk to bed. It's bright and there's noise from the neighbors and outside. So they tend to take some time before they can sleep, and they will sleep less hours. And they have found that night shift workers who work for 5 years have more cancers compared to those who work for only 1 year. So it is a straight graph, and the graph goes higher, the straight line goes higher, the longer you work in the night shift. So working night shift is actually cancer causing. All right, so, okay, we are looking at diet then. Since we have already looked at alcohol, cigarette smoke, then we have looked at the not enough sleep, and now let's look at the unhealthy diet. So what are the two items that we know is in the unhealthy diet, which is sugar and fat? And let's look at sugar, because there's been a lot of buzz about sugar in relation to cancer. There's been people telling that, when you eat a lot of sugar, you are feeding your cancer cells. And then, people go and ask their doctors and the nurses, and then they said, well, the thing is that you need sugar for your normal cells. You can't be not eating sugar at all. Then you said, well, then what is true? Well, the truth is that all food that you eat, whether it is fruits or whether it is meat, whether it's vegetable, fish, they all break down to sugar, or to be more specific, glucose. Because glucose is what the cells use, whether it's a normal cell or a cancer cell, it needs glucose. But the cancer cells have more receptors for glucose, and so when you put a normal cell and a cancer cell in a plate, for example, and you pour in some glucose, the cancer cell is going to take more glucose. And then when it takes in more glucose, it doesn't have enough oxygen, because the glucose again has to be converted inside the cell for it to work. So it doesn't have enough oxygen, but the cell modifies. This is the fantastic part. The cancer cell modifies itself so that it will start breaking down the glucose that it needs in a non-oxygen environment, compared to the normal cell that can only do it in an oxygen and oxygenated environment. So in the process, it produces more lactic acid. So when you put sugar, for example, glucose water, for example, instead of this food substance that break into glucose, when you drink it in, it is glucose enough to feed the cells. But if they are cancer cells, the cancer cells get fat more. So in that sense, the statement that says that glucose or sugar feeds cancer cells is in a way correct. Of course, you don't totally cut sugar out of your diet, but actually everything else converts to sugar. So even if you don't eat white sugar, if you don't drink glucose, or you don't have any honey, doesn't matter. All the food, if you are taking healthily, it will break down the glucose. And you don't want to be drinking glucose like in a soda drink or, Coca-Cola, whatever brand of, those soda drinks that you drink. They contain a lot of sugar. Every can has 8 spoons of sugar. And when you drink that in, that will feed the cancer cells more if there is cancer cells in the body compared to normal cells. All right? Now, more water. We drink water every day. Is there carcinogen? Yes, there is. Then you say, what again? Yeah. Well, the point is this. When in agriculture, you use fertilizers and they contain nitrites, and when it rains, that nitrite run off to the river or our source of water. Then when you feed animals with feeds, it also contains nitrates, and it runs off again, and it runs off to the source of river. Now, when that nitrate is fine in the river, but when it goes into the filtration plant or the treatment plant for water, they have to add chlorine, because now our water is so contaminated by the factories, by the germs and everything. They add chlorine to purify it, and that is when nitrate mixes with chlorine, it forms a chemical that is carcinogenic. Oh dear, you said, But I'm drinking water. But it's okay. If your water that you drink at your end is not straight from the tap, and you have filtered it through a reverse osmosis water filter or a very good activated carbon filter, it does remove this chemical that is carcinogenic. So the rule of the game, don't drink water straight from the tap, make it go through a filter and get that carcinogenic substance from the nitrates converted, removed, right? Now what about food? And we know that food, there is two food that is very, that has a lot of carcinogens, that is processed meat, like sausages, hams, and bacons, and also you have red meat. They all contain carcinogens. The red meat, especially when it is cooked at a high temperature, like grilling and like barbecue, you have your polycyclic chemicals form that can cause cancer. But the processed meat is a different story. What happens is that you notice that processed meat has a red color that is different from normal fresh meat. Yeah, because processed meat, they add nitrites to preserve it. And that changes the color to more red. Now that nitrite is fine when they put it into the processed meat. But when it is eaten into our body changes the nitrites to nitrosamines. Again, it's our body who does it. And that nitrosamine is carcinogenic. Then you ask the question, why don't the government or the Ministry of Health ban these substances because it's causing cancer? Or even tell people that it is so? Well, they do through talks like this. But the thing is that the law has not been changed to say you shouldn't have nitrite-containing substance because nitrite can be converted to nitrosamines. And that's the way they preserve processed meat all this while. It will take time for industries to find new ways because it is only in the last 5 to 10 years that WHO and well-established health institutions have come out with these findings that processed meat and red meat contain carcinogen and asking people to reduce their intake. So it'll take time to change the laws, it'll take time for the processes to change, but you can do something. You can choose not to eat processed meat because it contains carcinogen, and especially not to feed children these things. Sausages, they are in adult size, and the nitrites in there are safe, so to speak, for adults. But when children eat lots of sausages, or in fact, the study shows that they just take one sausage a day, they are found to have a higher incidence of leukemia and brain cancer. So just stop eating it. It is not helpful. It is not healthy food. There is no safe dose. Because if you look at the next slide, you will find that the incidence of colon cancer is dose dependent. What is dose dependent? That means the more you eat every day, the more your incidence of colon cancer. Huh? What do you mean dose dependent? I thought only cigarettes were dose dependent. That means the more cigarettes you smoke, the more your chance of getting cancer. No, but red meat and processed meat too in terms of colon cancer. And how much are we talking about? We are talking at a 25% increased risk ratio for 100 grams of meat every day. Huh? What does 25% mean, and how much is 100 grams? 25% risk ratio, just to give you an information, with age, your risk ratio is 4%. In other words, in a lifetime, your chance of getting colon cancer, if all other factors are the same, is only 4%. But if you eat 100 grams of meat every day, then red meat, of course, then your chance of getting cancer increased to 25% risk ratio. That's the difference. And how much is 100 grams of meat? I don't take so much meat. I don't take steak. But then 100 grams of meat is only this much. Look at my palm. Remove the fingers. This part is your 100 grams of meat. And that takes about a deck of cards is your 100 grams. That's not much. You take meatballs, you take a meat cake, you have some other forms of meat inside your dishes, and you add it up, it can come up to 100 grams. It's not that much. So we're looking at asking people to eat less red meat and less than 100 grams per day. So you say, wow, everywhere there's carcinogens. But there is a good news. The good news is that there are cancer-fighting foods. Wow, there are cancer-fighting foods. And this slide shows the 8 top cancer-fighting foods. And these cancer-fighting foods, one of them is broccoli, because broccoli contains a chemical that helps our body or initiates our body to produce more cancer-fighting enzyme. I thought, well, that's very good. In that case, I would eat broccoli every day and eat a big portion. No. That's not the message. The message is that eat a variety of fruits and vegetables that contain a lot of different phytochemicals that can fight cancer, and you are safer to protect yourself. And don't eat food or cut down on food or that contain carcinogens. All right? And lastly, we want to look at our mental health and how that changes the risk or the progress of cancer in our body. It has been actually shown that if a patient goes for treatment for cancer and he is depressed, and a lot of people go into depression once they find out they have cancer, their success rate of that treatment is less compared to another person who has a positive mental health. So depression has an interaction with our immune system and our ability to fight the cancer. And even stress. When people are undergoing treatment and they have to travel, let's say, 1 hour to the cancer center, and a cancer center is not next to your house. There is always a certain place that you have to go for your radiotherapy, and if you have to go every day, it takes time and to travel. And that traveling time, that stress during the traveling time affects the success rate of the treatment. In other words, if you don't have to go through that stress, it is more successful for you. So our mental health and of course our sleeping, and there are some people who cannot sleep. They go through hours and hours trying to sleep and they cannot sleep, and this is what we call insomnia. And insomnia also affects our risk for cancer. So as you can see, there are just so many factors in our lifestyle that can contribute to cancer. You have the 2 factors, that is the cigarette and the alcohol. You have the weight issue, the obesity and the overweight. You have the diet part, and then you have the exercise, where that is moderate exercise protects. Then you have the fruits and vegetables that have phytochemicals that can fight the cancer, and it's really all a matter of your choice. You choose the food that you put into your body. You choose the things that you are exposed to. You choose to exercise. You choose to sleep enough. And therefore, to change your risk for cancer, being a multifactorial lifestyle disease, is dependent on your choice. So choose wisely.